If you are using an online version of a novel or a short story, I am going to have you give me the paragraph numbers and the sections. Since this is a novel, I think instead of having you number every paragraph in the entire novel, and since you do not have page numbers, number the paragraphs in the section so that I can get close enough to where you are quoting the text to be able to see what the context is. Really, you should have enough of your own context given in your writing that it's clear. But sometimes students quote things where it doesn't really make sense to quote them. So having an instructor have the ability, or any reader have the ability to check the context is important. So let's just take a look then at how you might develop your paragraph and quote the source. So of course you're going to indent your paragraph, format everything in MLA format. Never start with a quotation. Always give some context, some background. Don't write an entire summary of the entire chapter or the entire novel. Give just enough that you can support your claim that you make in the first sentence of the paragraph to support the entire thesis of your essay, if that's what you're writing, and use actual words from the text. That's super important. We're not using paraphrases from any of our works of literature because it's really important to people who study works of literature to see the exact words that have been used, because one word can change the meaning slightly, or one word can have multiple meanings and add layers of meaning to the text and the point that you're trying to make. So let me get back to the letter 3 here, and if I were numbering these paragraphs, I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to have you do something that's not really standard for MLA format, but I think it's the most practical way for you to cite this online source if that's what you're using. So I'm going to have a quotation that I'm using about ambition, and it's going to come from this paragraph. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to come from paragraph 4. So I want it to say letter 3, paragraph 4 in my parenthetical citation. So I want to use this highlighted part. The way I had originally set up my introductory phrase doesn't fit with a question, so I need to revise that. So look carefully at what you are writing and make sure that you have introduced your quotations in a way that makes sense. So I might say at the end of this letter, and I might say third letter. There we go. So that makes more sense. Now, since I have letter written in here and third letter, I could just write. If you are quoting by paragraph, this is how you do it. It's in your Norton anthology, if that's what you're using. Some of the sample essays have things cited by paragraph. Generally, when we are working out of the Norton anthology, I just have you do the page number. If you were doing a page number, it would not have the comma or the word page or anything like that. It would look this way. But since I am quoting by paragraph numbered this one time, just for this, it's going to look like that. Strange, I know. Lots of different little details. Also notice that I have a period after the parenthetical citation, even though the quotation ends with a question mark. So when you have a question mark at the end of a quotation, you still put the period after the parenthetical citation. So that's one of those tricky little things. Question mark or exclamation point, you still get to put the period after the parenthetical citation. If this were not a question, I would not include something that ended with a period. I would just have the period here after the parenthetical citation. Okay, so remember that little trick. I'm putting my question mark back, maybe. Where is it? There it is. So after you have written something, quoted something, make sure you use some of the exact words or phrases that you have quoted in your explanation of the significance of the quotation. I'll pause and work on a sample of that so you can see. So I followed my quotation with a sentence that reacts to, responds to, or simplifies or restates maybe the quotation I have used. And to really show that connection, be sure to use some of the same words that you have quoted. And I'm going to show you an example. So I picked out 3 words: stop, determined, and resolved. Now, as I was writing, I wasn't sure which words I was going to use in the sentence I was creating, but I didn't want to put you through all the time it took for me to think about this. But so I have stop, and then I have unstoppable, which goes with that one. Determined, I use the word determination. So see, I'm using some of the exact same words, so it really conveys a sense of connection. And then resolved, and I have resolve here. So if you are finding that your tutor or your instructor is saying that you don't seem to have enough connection in your writing, like you're just dropping quotations in and they don't really make sense with what you're trying to say in the paragraph, then try this trick. Try using some of the exact same words that you have quoted in the sentence that follows and your further explanation throughout. So back to quoting the source, the text, the primary source. The novel is your primary source. You might also be asked to use secondary sources, which would be sources about the novel or sources about the theme that you are writing about with the novel. However, for this sample, I'm just showing you how to quote the novel. And so I also added, by way of more explanation of this idea of ambition and the destructive nature of ambition, I have used a quotation from the actual textbook. So, well, not textbook, from the novel, a printed version of the novel. This is the 1818 version that I have cited before. It is this one. So you can see how different it will look if you are just quoting the novel that's the printed novel, okay? So all you do is you use a signal phrase with enough context to make the quotation make sense. Again, in your parenthetical citation, you will have, for a print source, the actual page number. Also, notice that the period that's in the textbook, or the novel, sorry, that's at the end of this sentence gets delayed until after the parenthetical citation. Now, if I wanted to, I could also put Shelley here, because whatever is first in the works cited should be whatever goes in your parenthetical citation. However, if you're quoting from the novel again and again, and it's very clear that you're quoting from the novel here, you can just put the page number. But I will certainly not fault you for including the author's last name with the page number. But again, notice the difference here. The punctuation's different. So Shelley with just the page number with no comma between. Also, I don't put the word page or P period or anything like that for the page number. Just number. Name, number, no punctuation within the parentheses there. Okay, the difference here is I'm citing a paragraph because I was using the online version and not the printed version. This is for the printed version. Back to my point about using some of the same words again. So in my quotation, I have creator and source, and then I ended up using quotation marks around that part again in the sentence where I'm explaining the significance of the quotation and how it relates to the destructive nature of ambition. I put that phrase, those 3 words, in quotation marks again without citing it again because I have just cited that. So, use your best judgment about that. You don't have to recite it if it's in the following sentence. And the reason I didn't put these words up here in quotation marks is I used a different derivation of the same words. Okay, so not the exact same words, but different versions. And if I just used one at a time, like if I just said, I don't know, I can't rephrase this one very well because of the way that I have it. But again, use your best judgment as far as when to use quotation marks again for a word or phrase. So that phrase, I felt like, because I was using more than one word repeated again in my explanation, it deserved to have quotation marks. But if you have questions about whether you should or whether you shouldn't, just email me and ask me. I'd be fine to answer your questions for you. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you have to say in your writing and what your take is on Victor Frankenstein and all of the characters.